Never underestimate quiet strength. Sometimes the loudest person in the room is not the strongest, and the one who stays silent carries stories that could humble an entire crowd. That day at the barbecue, I learned what real power looks like, and it didn't come from shouting, bragging, or trying to prove anything. It came from calmness, confidence, and the quiet assurance of someone who knows who they are. When my cousin mocked me, I wanted to respond. My chest tightened, my pride burned, and my mind kept whispering, "Say something." But I didn't. I stood there with a faint smile, pretending his words didn't hurt. People laughed, and I laughed too, though inside, it felt like a storm. I had spent years learning discipline, courage, and respect, lessons taught in places far away from this backyard. Yet here I was, letting a few careless words make me feel small again. That's the thing about quiet strength, it's not about showing others you're strong. It's about knowing it for yourself. I remembered the long nights, the training, the moments when I almost gave up but didn't. I remembered the sound of my instructor's voice saying, "Real warriors don't prove themselves with words." Those memories were enough to keep me silent, to remind me that my worth didn't depend on a family gathering or someone else's opinion. But then something shifted. His father, a man who had seen battlefields, who had lived through silence far heavier than this, caught the tension. His eyes moved from me to his son, and I could see recognition, not just of my discomfort, but of something deeper. When he heard my call sign, it was like a curtain lifted. In that instant, my quiet strength wasn't invisible anymore. It spoke louder than any comeback could. My cousin froze. The same people who had laughed a minute ago were now quiet, waiting, watching. And in that silence, I felt a strange peace. I didn't need to say a word. I didn't need to defend myself. Someone else had seen the truth, and that truth carried weight. Quiet strength is not weakness, it's restraint. It's knowing you can fight back, but choosing not to, because you don't need to prove what's already real. So many people confuse silence with submission. They think if you don't react, you don't care. But silence can be the most powerful answer of all. It says, "I know my value. I don't need your validation." That kind of strength can't be faked. It's built through experience, through moments of loss, through the discipline of holding yourself together when everything inside you wants to explode. In that backyard, my cousin's laughter started to fade. His father's tone carried authority that only comes from years of command and discipline. He wasn't angry, he was disappointed. He didn't raise his voice, yet everyone heard him. The power wasn't in volume, it was in presence. And that presence was something I had seen before in leaders, in mentors, in those who had faced fear and didn't let it control them. I realized then that quiet strength isn't about silence alone, it's about control. It's about mastering yourself when you have every reason to lose it. It's about knowing when to act and when to wait. There is a unique kind of power in stillness, the kind that makes others question their own noise. People remember those who speak calmly in chaos, who stay composed when others crumble. That's the kind of strength that lasts. Even after the tension broke and conversation returned, I felt different. I had learned something essential: strength doesn't need an audience. It doesn't demand recognition. It simply exists, steady and unmoving, like the tide. When you've been through enough, you stop reacting to small storms because you've already survived hurricanes. That's the essence of quiet strength. It's earned through the battles no one sees, the nights you face yourself and choose to keep going. Most of us spend our lives trying to prove something. We want acknowledgement, validation, a moment where everyone finally says, "You did it." But the strongest people I've met never chase that. They don't need the applause. They move quietly, they lead gently, and they carry a depth that words can't describe. They know that real power doesn't shout. It whispers. And sometimes it says nothing at all. That day, standing in the fading sunlight, I understood that being calm isn't weakness. It's strength wrapped in patience. It's courage dressed as silence. And it's a reminder that the ones who don't speak often have the most to say, not with words, but with the way they live, the way they stand, and the way they face every challenge without losing their peace. True respect isn't demanded, it's earned. It doesn't come from the tone of your voice, the medals on your chest, or the titles before your name. It comes from how you carry yourself when no one is watching, how you treat others when you gain nothing in return, and how you handle power when it's given to you. Respect is not something that can be forced or faked. It's built over time, through consistency, humility, and quiet integrity. At that barbecue, I saw a perfect example of how easily people confuse attention with respect. My cousin had everyone's attention that day: his jokes, his loud voice, his confidence. People laughed, clapped him on the back, encouraged his mockery. But what he didn't realize was that attention fades the moment the laughter stops. Respect stays long after the noise is gone. When his father spoke, the entire atmosphere changed. No one told him to be quiet. No one asked for silence. It happened naturally because everyone respected him. And that respect came not from fear, but from the way he carried himself, steady, calm, with authority that didn't need to be announced. I've learned that the people who try hardest to demand respect often deserve it the least. They think respect comes from dominance, from proving they're right, from putting others down. But real respect grows from humility. It's when people see that you have power but use it wisely. It's when you could embarrass someone but choose kindness instead. It's when you keep your word even when no one will ever find out if you don't. These are the moments that build the foundation of who you are in the eyes of others. When my cousin's father looked at him, I saw disappointment, but also teaching. He didn't scold him harshly or shout. He simply said one word: apologize. That one word carried more weight than all my cousin's loud jokes combined. Because it came from someone who had earned the right to be heard. Years of discipline, service, sacrifice, they had shaped him into a man whose voice carried meaning. People didn't respect him because of his uniform, they respected him because of his character. True respect doesn't need to be spoken about. It's felt. It's the kind that makes people listen when you walk into a room, not because they fear you, but because they trust you. And trust is born from authenticity. You can't fake respect because people can sense what's real. They notice how you treat others when you think they're beneath you. They notice how you react when things don't go your way. They notice the small details that reveal your true nature. In that moment, I realized that even though my cousin wanted everyone's approval, he didn't have anyone's respect. People laughed with him but didn't look up to him. The moment the situation shifted, those same people fell silent, turning their attention toward the man who had earned it through years of quiet strength. That was the difference. One sought to impress, the other sought to serve. And people always remember service more than showmanship. Respect is not about being feared or admired for power. It's about being valued for integrity. It's about others knowing that your word means something, that your actions align with your values. It's built in the everyday moments: how you speak to someone who can't help you, how you react when someone insults you, how you treat people who once doubted you. It's in the way you stay consistent even when the world tests your patience. When his father spoke to his son that evening, it wasn't just about an apology. It was a lesson in how respect is earned. It was about teaching him that you can't talk your way into being respected, you have to live your way into it. Every decision, every action, every moment adds up to your reputation. The people who truly respect you do so because they've seen you handle difficulty with grace, responsibility with humility, and mistakes with honesty. Respect grows in silence. It doesn't need an audience or applause. It doesn't fade when you walk away. It lives in the way people speak about you when you're not around. It's the quiet acknowledgement of your character, the trust you build without realizing it, the impression you leave by being genuine. You can't demand that from anyone. You have to earn it one choice at a time, one word at a time, one moment at a time. That day, as I stood there, I realized that respect doesn't come from being seen, it comes from being understood. It doesn't come from trying to dominate others, it comes from lifting them up. True respect lives in the way you carry yourself through moments of conflict, the way you respond to injustice, and the way you handle your victories with humility. Some people will demand it. Others will quietly earn it. And the difference between the two defines who they truly are inside. Everyone has a story you don't know. It's easy to look at someone and make assumptions based on what you see on the surface, the clothes they wear, the way they speak, the expression on their face. But behind every calm smile or quiet stare, there's a story that shaped them. There are battles they fought silently, moments that tested their soul, and memories that still echo in their heart. People rarely show the depth of what they've been through. Sometimes, they carry their pain so gracefully that others mistake it for ease. At that barbecue, my cousin only saw what was in front of him, the version of me that was quiet, reserved, maybe even awkward. He didn't see the nights I had spent away from family, the challenges I had overcome, or the moments when I had to push past fear to stand where I was. He didn't know the meaning of the call sign he later heard, or the stories that were stitched into that single word. To him, I was just the cousin who wasn't loud enough to fit in. To me, I was someone who had walked through fire to learn silence. That's the mistake so many people make. They assume that silence means weakness, or that someone's calmness means they've never faced chaos. But the truth is, the quietest people often have the loudest histories. They've been through storms that would break most, yet they stand tall without asking for sympathy. They've learned that the world doesn't always listen when you shout, so they stopped shouting and started understanding instead. They learned that their worth isn't proven through noise, but through resilience. Everyone you meet is carrying something. Some carry loss. Some carry guilt. Some carry memories of people they couldn't save, dreams they had to bury, or moments that still haunt them. But you wouldn't know it because they smile through it. They laugh, they live, and they pretend everything's fine because that's what strength looks like when it has no choice. You don't see the times they wanted to give up but didn't. You don't see the nights they cried quietly so no one would hear. You just see the person they've become, stronger, wiser, and quieter. When my cousin's father recognized my call sign, it wasn't just a moment of realization for him. It was a reminder for everyone around that people have histories you can't see. That single word carried years of training, fear, endurance, and pride. It wasn't just a name. It was a symbol of a journey that only a few could understand. In that moment, everyone realized they had judged me without knowing who I truly was. They saw only the surface, not the story. The truth is, every person you meet has something that shaped them. Maybe it was a heartbreak that taught them compassion. Maybe it was failure that taught them patience. Maybe it was a betrayal that taught them trust in themselves. The stories people carry are what make them act, react, and think the way they do. When you learn to see that, you stop judging so quickly. You stop assuming you know someone just because you've seen a glimpse of their life. That night, I realized how powerful unseen stories can be. My cousin learned that mockery loses its strength the moment truth walks in. And I learned that I didn't need to explain myself to anyone. People will see only what they're ready to see. Sometimes, they'll never understand your story, and that's okay. Because your story isn't meant for everyone. It's what keeps you grounded, what reminds you of who you are when others forget. There's something beautiful about understanding that everyone carries unseen scars. It changes the way you speak, the way you listen, and the way you treat people. You start to approach others with empathy instead of ego. You start realizing that maybe the person who seems rude is just protecting themselves from another wound. Maybe the one who stays silent is tired of not being heard. Maybe the one who laughs the loudest does so to hide the ache inside. Everyone is fighting a battle you can't see, and that truth makes you softer, calmer, more human. So when you see someone standing quietly at the edge of the crowd, remember they might have walked a longer road than you can imagine. When you see someone choose patience over anger, it might be because they've already seen where anger leads. And when someone refuses to speak back to mockery, it might not be fear, it might be wisdom. Every person you meet is a collection of stories, of lessons, of invisible strength. You don't always need to know their story to respect them. Sometimes, all you need to know is that there is one. That day at the barbecue reminded me that what people don't say often matters more than what they do. Every silence has a history. Every calm expression hides a storm that once raged. And every person, no matter how ordinary they seem, carries something extraordinary inside, a story that explains everything, even when they never speak a word about it. Humility is louder than arrogance. It doesn't need to shout, it doesn't need to boast, and it doesn't demand to be noticed. It speaks through actions, through calmness, through the way someone carries themselves even when they have every reason to show off. Humility has a quiet power that arrogance can never imitate. The moment you see it, you recognize it, because it feels real, it's steady, grounded, and sincere. It's not about thinking less of yourself, it's about thinking of yourself less. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you don't need to prove it to anyone. At the barbecue, my cousin thought that mocking others made him look confident. He thought making jokes at my expense would draw attention, and for a short while, it did. People laughed. They clapped him on the back. But laughter built on arrogance is shallow, it fades quickly once the moment passes. He wanted to stand taller by making someone else smaller. But that's not confidence, that's insecurity dressed in loudness. True confidence comes from humility, because humble people don't need to stand on others to feel tall. They know their height comes from within. When his father stepped in, his presence said more than words ever could. He didn't scold his son in anger. He didn't raise his voice or try to embarrass him. He simply looked at him with that calm, controlled authority that comes from years of understanding what strength really is. That was humility in its purest form, a man who had power but didn't flaunt it, who had respect but didn't demand it, who had experience but didn't use it to belittle others. Everyone went silent, not because he asked them to, but because humility commands respect naturally. I've learned that arrogance is loud because it's fragile. It needs to be heard to feel secure. It thrives on attention, on validation, on the reaction it gets from others. But humility is the opposite. It's secure in silence. It doesn't need to be seen, it doesn't crave applause, and it doesn't crumble without praise. Humble people can stand alone because their strength doesn't come from who notices them, it comes from who they know they are. They're rooted. They don't bend with opinions. They don't compete for the spotlight because they understand that light shines naturally where truth exists. When I stayed quiet during my cousin's mockery, it wasn't weakness, it was humility. I could have defended myself, thrown back a few cutting words, or exposed things about him that would have made the crowd laugh at him instead. But I didn't. Not because I didn't have the strength, but because I had nothing to prove. That's what humility gives you: control. The control to walk away when ego wants you to fight, the control to stay kind when others are cruel, the control to rise above when you're tempted to sink to their level. Humility isn't about surrendering, it's about mastering yourself. The people who have truly achieved something in life rarely talk about it. They let their actions speak. You'll notice that those who've walked through real struggles rarely brag, because they know how fragile life can be. They've learned that every victory came with a price, and every success carries responsibility. They don't need to remind others of their worth, they live it quietly. That's what separates humility from arrogance. Arrogance screams for recognition. Humility simply exists, and in doing so, it earns more respect than pride ever could. Humility doesn't mean you let others walk over you. It means you choose grace over revenge, composure over chaos, peace over pride. It means you see the bigger picture, that proving someone wrong in a moment isn't worth losing your inner balance. The man who can control his pride is stronger than the man who wins every argument. Because winning with ego leaves you empty, but staying humble leaves you at peace. That's the kind of strength that doesn't fade with time. That day, when my cousin's father said, "Apologize," it wasn't just about correcting his son. It was a lesson for everyone watching. A lesson that humility and respect go hand in hand. That no matter how high you climb, you're never too high to be kind. The people who stay humble even when they have the right to boast are the ones who leave the deepest marks on others. You remember them not because they demanded your attention, but because their presence made you feel valued. Arrogance creates distance, humility builds connection. Arrogance wants to be admired, humility wants to understand. Arrogance looks for mirrors, humility looks for windows. The more you learn about life, the more you realize that those who truly have something to show never need to say it. Their actions, their consistency, their calmness, that's what speaks. That's why when his father stood there, no one dared to challenge him. Not out of fear, but out of quiet respect. Because everyone could see the difference between loud pride and quiet strength. That moment reminded me that humility doesn't take away your power, it multiplies it. It makes people listen without you asking them to. It earns trust without effort. It creates respect without noise. It turns strength into grace. And when people look back on moments like that, they don't remember who shouted the loudest. They remember who stayed calm, who stood with dignity, and who showed that real power never needs to prove itself. One moment can change how others see you forever. It doesn't always come with warning, and it rarely happens when you expect it. Sometimes it's a single word, a look, or a small act that reveals the truth of who you are. People can know you for years and still not really see you until that one moment shows them what lies beneath the surface. That moment at the barbecue was exactly that. For years, I had been the quiet one in the family, polite, calm, never trying to draw attention. To most of them, I was just another face in the crowd. But when my cousin's father heard my call sign, everything changed. The air shifted. The laughter stopped. And suddenly, the same people who barely noticed me were looking at me differently. It was strange how quickly perception can turn. A second earlier, I was the one being laughed at. A second later, I was someone they respected. All it took was one moment, a truth revealed, a connection made, a hidden part of my story coming to light. That's the power of moments like these. They have the ability to reshape not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. For so long, I thought silence made me invisible. But in that instant, I realized silence had been my strength all along. It gave me control, and when the truth surfaced, it gave me dignity. People often think that reputations are built over years, but sometimes they're redefined in seconds. You can live your whole life one way, and then one event can rewrite your story in the eyes of others. That's why the smallest actions matter, the way you react to insults, how you handle pressure, whether you stay calm or lash out. Every interaction plants a seed in someone's mind about who you are. Most of the time, you don't even realize it. But when that one moment comes, all those seeds come together, forming a picture that suddenly makes sense to everyone watching. When my cousin's father recognized me, I didn't have to explain anything. I didn't have to defend myself or justify who I was. The moment spoke for me. It carried weight that words never could. Because words can be twisted or ignored, but presence, real, grounded presence, is undeniable. It shows through your posture, your silence, your eyes. And when truth finally reveals itself, people see what they had missed all along. They realize the strength they had overlooked, the depth they had underestimated, the dignity they had mocked. That's how fragile judgment can be. One second, they think they know you. The next, they realize they don't. It made me understand that you never really know when your moment will come, the moment that defines you, or redeems you, or finally makes people understand what you've been quietly holding inside. So you have to live in a way that when that moment arrives, it tells the right story. Because the moment itself can be small, but its echo lasts. The most powerful changes in perception happen when people witness truth, not when they're told it. You can argue with someone for years, trying to make them see your worth, and they might never understand. But when they see it for themselves, in how you act, how you endure, how you carry yourself, it becomes undeniable. That's why you never have to force respect. You just keep being real, and the moment will come when reality speaks louder than reputation. In that quiet backyard, surrounded by fading laughter and the smell of smoke from the grill, I watched that truth unfold. My cousin, who moments ago was so confident, suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. The people who had laughed were now silent. No one had told them to stop, they just understood. The moment itself had changed everything. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It was simple, but it carried more impact than any confrontation ever could. It was proof that sometimes, the best response is patience. Because patience allows truth to arrive on its own. Everyone has a defining moment like that waiting for them. Sometimes it comes after years of being underestimated. Sometimes it arrives when you've already stopped caring about proving yourself. But it always comes, and when it does, it reveals everything. The truth about who you are, what you've endured, and what you stand for. It shows people that their assumptions were shallow. It forces them to see the strength they ignored. It reminds them that everyone has more depth than what appears on the surface. That day, the moment that shifted everything wasn't just about recognition, it was about revelation. It was about showing that character always reveals itself in time. You don't have to shout, you don't have to prove, you don't have to fight to be seen. The moment will come when your silence speaks, when your consistency shines, when your truth stands tall. And when it does, it changes everything, how others see you, how you see yourself, and how you understand what real strength looks like when it finally comes into the light. Dignity shines brightest when you stay calm under attack. It's easy to stay composed when everything is peaceful, but real dignity is tested in moments of chaos, when someone tries to provoke you, when your name is mocked, or when your worth is questioned in front of others. That's when your true character steps forward, not through words, but through the way you hold yourself. Dignity isn't about pride or silence alone. It's about grace. It's about choosing not to let anger steal your peace, not to let disrespect lower your standards, and not to let noise drown out your truth. That day at the barbecue, I felt the weight of everyone's eyes when my cousin began to mock me. His words were sharp, cutting through the laughter of others. I could feel the heat rise in my chest, the urge to respond, the instinct to defend myself. But something held me back, not fear, not weakness, but the quiet realization that I didn't have to fight for validation. I knew who I was, what I had done, and what I stood for. No insult could take that away. So I stood there, calm, silent, with a small smile that confused him. And that silence carried more power than any comeback ever could. Dignity doesn't mean you never feel anger or pain. It means you don't let those feelings control you. It's a form of strength that refuses to give others the power to define your emotions. People who try to humiliate others feed off reactions. They want to see you break, to see your calm crack, to know they've gotten under your skin. But when you stay centered, when you don't give them that satisfaction, you win a quiet victory. It's not about pride, it's about peace. You remind yourself that your worth doesn't depend on anyone's laughter, approval, or opinion. When my cousin's father recognized who I was, it wasn't just a revelation of my background, it was a reflection of how dignity looks when it's tested. The shift in the air wasn't only because of my call sign, it was because I had never lowered myself, even when I had the chance. If I had shouted back, the story that day would have been about an argument. But because I stayed composed, the story became about respect. People noticed that calmness. They remembered it. Because dignity leaves an impression that arrogance never can. True dignity doesn't need to defend itself. It doesn't rush to explain, justify, or retaliate. It simply is. It's built from the inside, shaped by self-respect and guided by discipline. It's the quiet understanding that your actions speak louder than reactions. The strongest people I've known have been those who remained calm in situations that would have broken others. They don't let insults reach their soul. They let others speak, they let the noise pass, and then they walk away with their head high, knowing that silence often says everything that needs to be said. There's a kind of beauty in that composure, the beauty of knowing you've mastered yourself. Because in the end, the only thing you can control is how you respond. You can't control how people treat you, what they think, or what they say behind your back. But you can control your tone, your expression, your reaction. And when you choose calmness over chaos, you rise above the moment. You become untouchable, not because you're cold, but because you refuse to let someone else's disrespect define your energy. That day, my cousin's laughter slowly faded when he realized his words had no effect on me. And when his father spoke, the quietness that followed wasn't just about discipline, it was about realization. Everyone understood, without it being said, that composure is the mark of true strength. That's the thing about dignity. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't ask to be seen. It reveals itself naturally in moments where others lose theirs. Staying calm under attack doesn't mean you let others walk over you. It means you understand timing. You know that not every battle deserves your energy, and not every insult deserves a response. It means you recognize the difference between reacting to protect your ego and responding to protect your peace. When you understand that, you stop being pulled into every storm. You learn to let the storm pass while you remain still, steady, and grounded. People remember those who hold their dignity when things get ugly. They remember who kept their voice low when others shouted, who smiled when others cursed, who walked away when others stayed to argue. That kind of calmness earns respect even from those who once mocked you. Because somewhere inside, everyone recognizes the power of restraint. It takes far more courage to stay composed than to explode. That night, as the laughter turned to silence and eyes shifted toward me, I felt something change, not just around me, but within me. I realized that dignity isn't something people give you, it's something you give yourself. It's the armor you wear when words are used as weapons. It's the steady heartbeat that keeps you grounded when others lose their balance. It's the quiet glow that shines when you choose calmness over chaos, grace over ego, and peace over pride.